Hello, everyone. My name is Silvio da Silva. I am an information designer. I work as a creative director at the NBC Universal in the product team, and I'm very honored and pleased to be here to speak with you all about my thoughts on the philosophy of data visualization. Um, I am uh, very interested in visuals and design with apply information technology to the thinking process and how we presenting data. So good morning, Boston. Good morning, everyone. And I would start to bring the intent and design. So we visualize ideas to products that touch and engage audience. We start with the concept, the data collection, the analysis, and the visualization. The purpose of data viz is to visualize ideas to products that touch audiences. We can use the restaurant as a metaphor where the nutrients, the data, the meal, the cooking is the design, the taste, the satisfaction are the results that reflects on the audience. Um, so data, so we need to deliver it in a pure, honest, and healthy package. We consume, we eat, we digest. If the food tastes good, we come back for more, like a good story. That's data. Data needs to be a package, the information in a simple, easy form to be digested, that we can understand the audience. We create a healthy meal, or else we have empty tables to serve. So intent and design, it's it goes along the lines of Mark Twain, where you can't depend on your eyes when your imagination is out of focus. That's quite important, isn't it? So concept, data collection, analysis, and visualization leads into communication. In the communication, there is intention, there is the action, and there is influence. So when you have here this example uh, that I work with a gigantic team for the Olympics in Rio, uh, the point of a communication is targeting and reaching this audience. Data in a story, folks, is a necessity. Data means nothing without a story. When we communicate data in a story, we must understand the receiver, the audience. At NBC, we work in this example of the Olympics, and I'll give a little brief here. What is that is all about, and that is pretty much. See if I can open my group here as far as I can, and show you the amount of material that we can put it in a project like that, from photos, videos, graphics, reportings, uh, diagrams, venues, maps, social media. So the amount of elements that you can combine in telling stories within stories, uh, just incredible, phenomenal. Um, so from stories and articles, as we have it here, to photos, to categories where we can bring it up into a variety of ways, uh, telling the sports, gymnastics is here, for example, where we we have the videos that depict what those folks are doing here, while you still can find out about more stories, or you can just go straight to another story of the gymnasts and read more about that, you know. So, and as you read that, you can still find out this data on the weather, the local weather, and you can find out more over other news that ties up to the group, to the segment, and we can just go back and learn more about the medal count. And as we move into the medal count, the top countries that we find here, which is all feeding data back there in real time, we'll get into the charts and the graph, the top three, in addition to the other outstanding countries there. You can still see more and see more data. And data through the schedules, to the game or the games, the each events, and the backstory of each athlete and what they're doing and what the team is doing, and how do they are moving around with that. See, as I'm clicking here in Argentina, I'm going to standings and how to see more. How do they did in each category? So it's all data feeding in real time. So the Olympics in Rio is a typical example of the vast amount of data that was used throughout the competition and through all the media formats that you can possibly imagine that from slideshows to uh, different personal articles and bios per category, per sites, you know. So yeah, so this is a little bit of a glimpse of the ceremonies and the parties and the games and the background of the city. So it, you can just floating with information and as we move along with that. Now back to our talk here. Um, in this example reel, it's kind of like a quite convenient and if it just brings it like into it touches uh, some of the folks here in the audience, it touched me myself the most because that's quite much the city that I was born and raised, and that's real. That's where I'm coming from, and so I bring back a little bit of my background. How did I get into this data process and the visualization and design by the impact that the city has happened has touching me in in several ways. If the presentation should have intention, action, and influence, I would think that this contrast of influence, uh, that's that got me into, I guess, be involved with design. So growing in a with the perfect and abstract sides of a city, so complex, um, with color and and and, and a variety of lines and movements and shapes, uh, brought me to that those patterns that influence me. So those forms, colors, and characters, the symmetry of those colors on my environment inspire me to sketch my surroundings, you know. And this my surroundings got into how could I combine those complex and yet very simple elements into into something that I would be interested in and be moving with my career with that. And that was map making. So map making came to me and it was a great fit. So with map making, I got into this cartography, which I studied in the Navy, and I did a lot of deep water maps, bathymetric maps throughout the country, and and I and from the nautical maps, I was exposed to other map making challenge. I suppose what this intangible thing called data has always been around my senses. So layers of information, shapes, numbers, colors, displaying, content influence my design, creative process. I move into agricultural, geological maps, and eventually into typographic maps and city maps and guide maps. So, as a cartographer, I was moving to explore other areas in information design. So, in the early 90s or maybe late 80s, I got into the US and I was on a work assignment on signage design. It was quite unusual in the beginning for me, but I realized that everything fits all together with data again. So environmental graphics or signage design uh, allowed me to use data in other format, applying to materials and architectural elements. So we have to kind of like use the material and colors and typography and shapes and lines in, into real material that would most often guide people, guide audiences. So ultimately, the data that I was applying was to target audience. They're going to make a use of that, and they still do actually. Uh, so a lot of those signage that I was working with is still in effect up to today. So from the information design, my first involvement with the information design environmental signage display got me to later on in the MTA, the New York City Transit, doing map design. At the MTA, it was built my foundation for combined data and design. This great cartographer, Dave Jenkins, influenced me a lot. And yes, design, logic, and influence. So there at the MTA, I was involved with maps, design work. Um, Back then using Illustrator 89 or Illustrator 90, and with there was no layers back then, and freehand, and also some TIFF files. It was when I think of today, you know, with how far we came from that time, of the beginning of the computer technology, computer graphics. It's incredible, you know, that I did those maps, 8 color map, you know, CMYK plus 4 spot colors and going to press millions of maps a month. It was incredible, and as well as the other borders, bus maps. So from that level, I got into digital graphics, and I embracing journalism led me to a better understanding of information design and storytelling. Uh, I spent the remainder of the time on the 90s with news publications such as Newsweek, New York Daily News, Forbes. So the web was becoming popular, and I wanted to experiment telling a story on a small screen. So I worked from other news organization, and my first experience with the digital world of interactive using Flash at that time was with the Associated Press at AP. There was a team of designers, and at my group there, we put like individual stories on the sites. There was the custom-made sites for all the small newspapers, online newspapers across the country. And from AP, I began to move into the digital area, into ABC, which was a news broadcast, and using the digital media to promote what they were doing on TV. That was a wonderful experience that allowed me to begin getting into more into JavaScript and HTML, and putting more of that material all together. From that time, I moved into Reuters, and here I have an example here of Reuters of my very first experience with D3 and some more JavaScript, um, creating like we work in a project, the poverty in America, that involves again, similar to the Olympics, a lot of videos and articles and bunch of writing and slideshows, and of course infographics and data storytelling, telling what was happening, in various various ways, like showing ranks of data, and how all that put it together, and you know, so Mapbox and D3 was a huge help here in a project at this level here. So from Reuters and all this material that I was doing in editorial infographics, uh, from those digital world working, I I found the power of the storytelling with data crucial, crucial to continue moving on my journey of learning and experience, and have different experience. So I take a step back now from all this past up to present now, excuse me, into bring it up Tate Linden, this great designer uh, that I learned quite a lot from him. And when he says that design is an opportunity to continue telling the story, not just to sum everything up. Uh, and uh, but as we see all that, and we breathe our minds and appreciate also uh, this amazing graphic artist and sculptor and poet as well, Vladimir Diaspino, who is using data storytelling in a simplistic yet very creative way with his graphics, his hand graphics, and his thinking process to move into the timeline of his life, his life timeline, if you call it that way. Um, and a design sensor, the analytical, uh, we aren't reducing but simplify a tale with a purpose. We always are enhancing the story. We are adding to it. And with that in mind, I, 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 I think that thoughts can turn us into things. Okay, here's an example of a map that I create with a group of friends from CartoDB and developers. We did this completely out of experimentation. It turned to be a great success. And we took the Oscar in 2015, and we pulled Twitter feeds, from a variety uh, of, uh, of folks across the globe to see using the social media, you know, tracking the audience behavior. We're parsing about 179,000 Twitter feeds to a map to API. And this is what we came up with. And as you see it, uh, it tells here what is how is the behavior of people at that time. See if I can stop here. As you see, you can interact with or I can let it go. At that moment, you can see the the, the data average of 112,000 at that moment received at that moment tweets across the globe, and you can go and can see how is them moving around the globe. How you can see the variety here in the U.S. and if I continue and let it go, I can see how far it goes. And if I zoom down, I can even see that people are who would how would you think that somebody would be here in the middle of the world here? Is that Hawaii? How much people are looking at. And so, you know, uh, the amazing is that we created the five categories: actor, and picture. Uh, and the other folks are like supporting actor and supporting actors. So this is how we made it that a very interesting way, combining the tree and the CartoDB API, uh, putting all the data and see how was the reaction. So we're trying to track with pictures for the winners, which could put the pictures here, but it would be too complicated on the design side. But the point here is to see how exciting people get, how much get influence the whole globe when you start hitting the big moments towards the end of the event. So that's one form that you can display data and so this desire to create something or a wish can and should influence one or an audience. A compelling form of presentation can only be achieved with will and action. That's totally equals an intention. So analytics and objectives simple and they should be bright, diverse, clear, and humble. So the structure of a story, it starts with a vision that's shared with data analysts who digs into the facts that's included in the purpose or the goal. That is established, uh, sinks, sync leads into emotion, most often by the design, wireframing, storyboard. That process of visuals The expectation from the team and the creators to or from the audience leads into human behavior. If you can project on our data visualization facts and emotion through a vision or a will, we might produce amazing results to the audience, whether it's impact for fun, to debate, to study, for curiosity, or just plain amusement. So the structure of the story is involves all those areas here, and you see that the fact or the data leads into vision or intention, and also leads into the emotion. So we have to feel it, think, analyze, and design. So most often, in the groups are format with the strategy team, the editorial team, the technology team, and the marketing. Why I put the market here? Because most often there are organization, groups, or companies that we have to promote at some point. You know, we have to be supported. We have to be paid for that product that you are delivering, and that's what you need the market. But most often, the basic of creating a story, data story, is with the analytics, the content or the editor, the editing, the contest or the design team, the engineering or the development team, front and back end, of course, and the analytics or the what you call in most office the strategy, but involve the analytics and the research, the people who can filter that data and work with the design and the engineering. So the data storage, the report archive leads into the visuals and deliverables. So the structure of the story, it works in a linear sense. It's a linear storytelling. So the data story that involves all those elements that I brought it before, that I mentioned before. Occasionally you have again the market there. Uh, it comes from thoughts that translated to influence, which influence who the audience. So that the audience that you must have that respect that I said from the beginning of our conversation here. And you need to respect them because they know better. Otherwise, they don't come back to your meal. So the tables are going to be empty. So the message and what's the goal is really is to amuse us, to guide us, to educate us, to engage us, you know, so we can have our own curiosity and how we're going to react to that. But each of those facts, there are emotion associated with that. That's the audience. That's what I'm bringing up. So data gives a story a meaning. The meaning is what matters. So the argument here is the archival. You know, the process hits the audience emotion core. So the framework of a story, we present the data in a context of a story. Like all stories, tell should contain a conflict. That said, the visuals in a narrative are centered around the protagonist. As in a Webster was saying that Shakespeare, the protagonist of the great and modern poetry. So the protagonist deals with the climax, the actions. He has to have engaged, to intrigue. We have to make you analyze. So all the audiences wanna. have all those adjectives around them, around this, the, the story, that the real top of that is this action, the climax. So it's linear and begins and it's an end. But the the vertical side there, what's happening in the middle of the story is the interest. So everything goes into this timeline uh, between the interest and the time. So a story should create an impact that retain and sensitize an audience. The story uh, is it brings the context, the content, and the argument, right? So we present the data in a context of a story. The data viz is best explained in a linear form. And again, the data enhances comprehension and an effective tell incites emotional connections. So we have to have this graphics that I'm putting here is just to illustrate how you have to have the hooks and the climax around the protagonist in this linear base when you're telling the story. So that's how we retain uh, the sensitivity towards the audience. The audience and the receiver, uh, the forms or methods of distribution that's indoors and outdoors is through mobile, remote, interactive, or static. But the visuals remains all coming from the data source. Signage, parks, in and out, playgrounds, museums, transportation, terminal, recreation centers. You go on. So what do you use? You use all those elements, kiosks, mobile phones and tablets, desktop, uh, signage, displays, for where? Organization, uh, transportation facilities, uh, and airports, train stations, parks, museums, government. What kind of forms do we deliver that data? Well, there's several ways that we can do. We can bring that in context, but most often are with distribution, with comparison, with relationship, with trend. And I should add here also guide, because you guide people with signage, you guide the audience throughout places so they can move themselves around large area or even small areas. So I'll take another break here to bring up Paul Klee, the creator of the thinking eye, work that done in the 50s, I suppose, late 40s. And Paul Klee said in one of the sections of his work, which is Serenity, and it says that for the understanding of a picture, a chair is needed. Why a chair? To prevent the legs as they tire from interfering with the mind. That was Paul Klee. Now, on the top here, I bring Serenity because it was taken from the professor Edward Tufte, the father of information design, great influence on my life once I got in the US. And he's working actually on the thinking eye of Paul Klee, and is reworking around the idea of his own project, his own information and data design professor as he is. And he's taken the serenity as a condition under which all brain power is devoted to the thinking eye. And and that's what to make us all think that we kind of have to step back and breathe a little bit what are we going to present, how we're going to present, what are the process that we're going to present, what are the expectations that we have and we might have from the audience. So that's what I think we have to step back and take out the rush because we're always rushing to deadlines and pushing, but we really want to be proud of what we do and how we want to present them. So I'm bringing here this breathing of air to all of us to digest before we get into this format of structurized story and what we're going to create and deliver. So I thank you all. It's been a tremendous pleasure to be here with the at the summit at the conference. And remember, the audience don't care what you know as much as you want to know that you care. So I thank you so much for having me here.